in store for a really fun show. My guest is somebody that I have had the honor of working with, and he's contributed to a lot of different industries, but we're going to talk about some television. And as y'all know, that is my passion. I don't know why I love it so much, but I'm a kid who grew up a little bit of a lonely child. I didn't have a whole lot of friends. I had some physical deformities. I had just all kind of issues. And for 2 years of my life, I had a tongue thruster. I couldn't talk to anybody. I sounded like this. So I found great solace in my friends. Samantha on Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, F. Drew, Addams Family. I could go down the list. There's even a show that nobody really seems to know. I don't know why I'm the only one who knows this. It was called The Champions. It was a British TV show about these three explorers, and one of them, Stuart Damon, I became friends with. He ended up starring on General Hospital. And their plane crashed in the Tibetan mountains, and these monks found them, and they were infused with all of these powers. No one's ever seen the show. I'm curious if my guest has. But in terms of TV trivia, I rock because I had a lonely childhood, and don't feel bad for me because I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved how it permeated me growing up. And then I was the host, guys. I'm going to laugh. I was the host of the B minus movie awards. Yes, that's where my career ended up. And I also have a whole bunch of television friends that popped out of the screen into real life. I became friends with Florence Henderson from Brady Bunch. And, oh my gosh, his name just escaped me. We played on Battlestar Galactica, not Dirk Benedict, but his name will come to me. He recently passed away, a very dear friend of mine. I can see his face. That's what happens when you get older. Those memories go, what? So I'm going to hang on to them while I can. Isaac from The Love Boat was one of my directors, and I've got all kind of great friends. I just love this medium. I love what goes into it, and it's different than movies. It's a little bit more fleeting. It's a bit quicker. I've done talk shows and game shows and lots of infomercials. And the way that I met my first guest is through, I was going to say my passion. My infomercials, my passion. I don't think it's a passion, although I am obsessed with pitching things. I now teach for the last 5 years on Zoom, everything from pitchsecretsmasterclass.com, which I urge you to check out. I do that live every Sunday, to a variety of trainings that I've created. I have a new one coming up called Elevator Pitch 2.0, and a new book that I'm so excited will be coming in this spring called Pitch Secrets A to Z. All the things I've learned on my path to grossing over $2.5 billion, 197 infomercials, and 30 years on home shopping. Oi, I've been around. I've done a few things. And so is my guest. I want to bring to the stage right now, Mr. Robert Rosen. Come on up here.
Oh, thank you for having me. So good to see you, Forbes.
Nice to see you as well, my friend. All right, so share with everybody a little bit about you, and then I will tell the story of how we met.
Okay, well, first I've got to say, all right, I don't know the champions. I'm going to come out and say that right away, but I do relate to what you said. I was an only child and grew up in a not the best household. And I think that television became the gateway to me, like to dream and to think that there could be a better world, that my adulthood was going to be different than the childhood. And I was a weird kid. I used to take a stopwatch and watch like the Brady Bunch, and I would start and stop and try to deconstruct the show, figure out how long the first act is, how long is the second act, what's the A story, what's the B story, what's the C story. And I was just fascinated with the way these shows were put together. And if you had asked me when I was 10 years old, I didn't know exactly how, but somehow, some way, I wanted to be a part of this. This was all I wanted, and I was
Now,
obsessed
okay,
with it.
was I just a dork? I thought Bewitched was real. I thought I was like watching, like I was watching somebody's house. And not, I know that sounds crazy, but I remember clearly the first time I walked onto a set, I was on a soap opera, and I'm like, I couldn't comprehend the way the sets looked as opposed to how they looked on television. And I was also 15 and a half years old when I met Bob Hope on the Miss Teenage America pageant. I kept going, dude, you're real. Like the TV came alive. And I'm sorry that I was so weird, but the fact that you were timing the shows and thinking of storylines and plot lines blows my mind.
I was obsessed with it. I thought, look, one day, I couldn't really imagine myself actually running shows or directing shows. It just seemed too big. But I thought, if I even know these people somehow, like, if Mr. Brady knows me or that just seemed like I just want to be a part of that world. I want out of where I am. I was in a suburb of Boston, and first generation parents. And my look, if it sounds like I'm knocking my upbringing, my parents were broken. They were war children from Eastern Europe, and so they were in a place. And so for me, the American dream was seen through television. It was watching sitcoms, it was watching newscasts, sports. I was just obsessed with it. Howard Cosell. I just wanted somehow to be a part of it some way.
Barbara Walters, absolutely.
There
All
we
right,
go.
so I did not know this about you. Now, just to fast forward a little bit, we met because one, thanks to Carrie, we have a very good friend in common. But you've done a lot of shows, and we met because you did a TV series about infomercials.
Yep.
So we're going to jump to that, and then we're going to go back through your career.
Okay. So the show was called The Infomercials That Sold Us. It was a three-part series. It's on Fox Nation. It was hosted by Dennis Miller. And I came up with this idea because when I first got to Los Angeles and I was working in news, I came up through television news. I would come home after the 11 o'clock newscast. And by that point, Letterman was pretty much done. And I would just kind of unwind and flip around channels and watch infomercials. And look, at that time, they were campy and fun. And I was not looking at them the way you were, right? This was business. You were selling, right? But for me, as an end viewer, to watch, Tony Robbins and the way he was communicating, to watch some of the sillier ones, Tommy Woo, to watch, Tony Little, you can do it, to watch all of this, to me was just like this. I was like that kid again with the stopwatch. I'm watching all of you guys selling these products, some ridiculous, some amazing, and it just was like very compelling to me. And so I went to Fox and I said, look, I think that this would be, nobody's done this before. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's take a look back at it. It's nostalgic, but it's also a story of America. It's a story about selling. It's a story about selling yourself. It's a story about dreaming big. It's a story about people aspiring for more, wanting to be their best selves.
See, and when I would watch them, I was definitely a part of them as they started. But when I would watch them, I was reminded about my dad, who was an inventor and a dreamer. And he turned to me in the garage one day, a garage that in my mind looked like a mix between Willy Wonka and the dad in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Because he had all these crazy, he was a magician and he was an engineer, and it was wacko how he viewed life. And he turned to me one day and he said, "Kiddo, how do I get my inventions out to the world?" I said, "Dad, I have no idea. I'm 8." And when he passed away and they took all the stuff out of that garage and threw it away, literally, because it was a lot of it and it didn't make sense to most people, I realized the importance of getting people's dreams to fruition quickly, because when you die, it's over. And so that for like 20 years of my life, I took those inventors like my father to infomercials and home shopping and did all that. And so when I would watch them, I always had a sense of pride that this was somebody's creation, as wacky as it was. Like I did not believe that the Chia Pet or that Snuggie was going to go anywhere. I was so wrong. But it was fascinating. What once something you learned by working with all of us, because you corralled a whole bunch of very famous friends of mine and did the show, congratulations. But what's
Thank you.
something that you gleaned that maybe you didn't know?
I think that I thought that there was going to be more cynicism on the part of the infomercial pitch people, that, there was, looking back on it 30 years later, there'd be a little bit of a wink and a nod, like, yeah, it was all kind of ridiculous. And I realized that really almost without exception, there was a lot of passion for these products, and there was an understanding that it was like kind of the big tent, right? And you're bringing people into the carnival. So sometimes, you would be silly or you would do something that was very showy, but underneath it all, I think everybody really believed in their product. And I came away thinking it says something good. In a way, it's the most American story, right? I think that for the pitch people, they're dreamers like your father, who wanted more. But I also think that for the people who are buying, it was aspirational. Everybody wants to be the best version of themselves. And whether it was Susan Powter showing people how to be thinner, right? Or Forbes Riley showing people how to be healthier, or Tony Robbins showing people how to be more confident. it said something good about the American people that they gravitated towards this, that somehow there was this period of time where the commercial became the show as opposed to the filler. And I thought it was really interesting.
You know what? I love hearing you say that. And it's true. I mean, I'm sitting here with my spin gym, which people thought was completely silly, and I will still forever be the most passionate about this little yo-yo, because it does make you more confident. And it's funny how you said that because, and I've done home shopping for decades. There's never been somebody who's taken a product on that didn't believe that was the thing. And some of them are a little crazy, but they never see it that way.
Yeah. And look, and in the series, we kind of traced, look, it started with people like yourself and people, right, Kevin
Well, Ron
Harrington.
Popeil. Ron was a dear friend of mine. Ron and I are actually related. It turns out my grandmother and his like father were sister brother, which is weird to have found out. But Pocket Fisherman and Set It and
Yeah,
Forget,
yeah.
he
Hey,
loved all of those things.
and then, by the second episode of this limited series, you start seeing how now the stars want in on the game because they saw what was happening, right? And it had been absolutely taboo up until that point for a star to do any kind of a commercial or product endorsement in America. They would do them overseas. And then you have, Suzanne Summers breaking down that door and Joan Rivers. And now all of a sudden, right, by the early 2000s, everybody, agents are calling up the infomercial producers and saying, do you have a product you can put everybody wanted in on this. So it's an interesting trajectory. And I thought, I mean, look, this is what I love about doing documentaries, about doing unscripted work. I'm working on a book now, and it's like each one you enter into a brand new world and you explore, and it's great. It's never the same. It's never the same thing twice.
Well, so let's go back now. How the career architected. So now you're a little boy who dreams of all these things. And was your first move out to Hollywood? Is that what you did when you were young?
Yes. So the day after I graduated from Boston University, naively packed up the car, drove cross country, went to as many baseball stadiums as I could along the way, got to Los Angeles, broke, like literally down to, the last few bucks. And my parents were freezing me out, Jewish parents, we they're gonna freeze me out and I'm gonna end up going to law school. I'm gonna beg to come back home and go to law school. But I was determined. So I'm knocking on doors of television stations, radio stations. I have absolutely nothing to offer them, and I don't realize this. So, in order to stay alive in this business for 1 year, I put my college degree to use by selling used cars near the Mexican border.
Oh my gosh.
So that was the glamorous start. I was in a place called National City. If anybody knows that, there's a mile of cars. And I was selling Hondas and just knocking on doors, knocking on doors. Finally, I got into a local television station. And I think I had thrown a Hail Mary, like I had written them before. And this is like 1991, so I'm like on a typewriter. And I just remember writing like, you need to save me. My parents spent $50,000 to send me to school, and I'm selling cars near the Mexican border. Help. And I think they just thought that there was maybe some humor in it or something. And so I got a job as a news writer. And from there, things happened quickly. I was there for a couple years. I got called up to Los Angeles and ended up working at CBS News. And I was like really young. I mean, I look back now and I was like, I was working, big stories, OJ, and I was literally like 3.5 years removed from a car lot. And
You know, it's
and
funny. I'm going to share this because I'm just thinking about one of my first jobs. I just wanted to be on television so bad. Was I was in Pasadena and I found a local cable station, and I think we called the show "Will Work for Food" because we had restaurants who were willing to let us film there and talk about their restaurant and put it on local cable. And I was like, I'm doing it. I'm on television. Right? Anything that you could do, which is so surprising now. That well, we'll get into that in a second. So now you're doing news. Are you happy at that time?
loving it. And I'm producing newscasts, but I also want it to be on the air. So this is almost like the Will Work for Food. There was a really small cable network called the Jewish Television Network. Like almost nobody saw it, but they had a newscast and they paid you $100 a story. I'm like, I'm in. So I'm doing stories and they are, it's one man band shooting and I'm doing these stories and then eventually I did get a chance to go on air. It was in there was a show before TMZ that Harvey Levin did called Celebrity Justice. So I was on that show. Did that for a few seasons, and I don't know if I'm shooting through my whole resume too quick, but then I just really decided when that show went off the air after a few seasons, I really thought about it, and this was kind of a moment. This was like a moment where you have to be really honest with yourself. And I'm like, okay, I've now been in this business. This was like 2005, 14 years. Would I hire myself to be on air? Yeah, but I don't have to. I mean, I'm okay. I'm decent. Would I hire myself to run a show? 100%. And I realized that's what I needed to do. Like I would go out of my way to hire me to run a show or to produce a show or to write a show. Eh, on the talent. So I started moving towards show running. I decided I wanted to do longer form television and worked on Kitchen Nightmares for a few years as a supervising producer with Gordon Ramsay, who I loved. And in 2011, a big chance came. And it's funny how these things, I don't know if it's like this in your career, Forbes, but it's like the big things are kind of unexpected. I just remembered I was like in a break after a season with Kitchen Nightmares. And my agent at the time called me and said, you know, there's a show, it's a paranormal show, and they're looking for someone to run the show. They did 8 episodes. It didn't go that great. They need somebody to come in there and really put their thumbprint. I didn't know anything about paranormal, never really particularly had an interest in it. They send me the tapes and I'm like, oh my God, I don't think so. And I went to dinner with the owner of the production company and I had given him a list. I said, here are the 11 things. I think you have a good idea here, but here are the 11 things that I think you guys have totally effed up. And I'm going through them. And I remember about halfway through, he just kind of like turns to his number two and he's like, who is this guy? Anyway, they called me. I did the show. It was called The Dead Files. It was the first chance that I really had. And this was like the dream fulfillment from being that kid, you know, breaking down shows. So now I really had the chance. There was no committee, no anything to really shape a show and try to make it something sustainable. And we ended up going for 15 seasons. It's
Oh my
the Dead Files, 225 episodes. It's on Max, the whole series.
wow.
And during that time, this was the thing that I'm really the proudest of at this point in my career. Right when the social justice movement was starting, I created a show called Reasonable Doubt, which took a second look at possible wrongful murder convictions. That show's also on Max. It ran for 5 seasons. I think in large part due to our reporting, there were 9 people who were exonerated or released who had been convicted of murder. And that was just such a fulfilling experience. So yeah, there were moments. It's hard when you're in the middle of it, but there were moments when I did think of that 10-year-old kid, and I'm like, all right, I've got 2 shows that are going. I'm running them. I'm shaping them. That 10-year-old kid would have been pretty psyched.
Well, and it's funny, and I will just share a little bit because my dad, when we were growing up, he used to say he had dirt on his hands because he was a printer. And he always said to me, you should never be working with your hands. See those guys over there in the white shirts? They sell printing. You should be selling it. I'm like, I'm never selling anything, Dad. Selling seems stupid. And, and believe me, when I got invited to go to QVC my first time, I'd done an infomercial for a product called Biodepolis. It was like a hair retardant. Slowed your hair, didn't make it go away. And I'm like, 2 things I learned. One, don't do a product whose name you don't like and can't pronounce. And 2, don't say the word retard on television or anywhere because I giggle. It's kind of silly. I want the hair to go away. And I went to QVC. They were all excited because I could host. I was a much better host, and I always got cast as newscasters. But I walked into this cavernous building with 7 cameras, with no camera operator. It was all electronic. A host, I had no idea what I was doing. I did my own makeup. I get there, and it's all over before I remember thinking, I'm never doing that again. That was horrible. Everything about it was horrible. And for a year, I'm like, I'm good. And then someone called and said, hey, we know that you're like a specialist in exercise products. I'm like, yeah, and well, we've got this elliptical glider on QVC. I'm like, no, no, don't do QVC. She said, no, let me tell you something. I know you're an actress. When you're an actress, you're supposed to be a waitress or do some day job. She said, this is a day job. My girl who does it 6 times a year makes over $70,000 selling an Orbitrek. I'm like, wait, 70 divided by 7. Oh, I'll do that. And I made the first year I did make $210,000, tripled her rate, did that one product on QVC for 15 years. And I
Wow.
will tell you, had no desire to do that. It turned into part of my entire life being on home shopping. So I think, it's just, it's a funny thing because what would you say to a young man or woman who wants to get into the industry based on the fact that wasn't as planned as you thought?
I think that you have to, I think you have to know where you're going and know and pick a lane. I do think that's important. So if you want to be a writer, write every day. Get up every morning, have the discipline to write, even if you don't have an assignment for it, write on spec every day, right? Writers write. If you want to be talent, then do anything, whether it's, going on Jewish television network or going to the cable access. Don't wait for permission. Start doing it, or grab a camera or grab an iPhone and start doing it. And, these days, there are a lot of outlets that you and I didn't have, right? You could, if you really, really wanted to be a talent, you can start a YouTube channel and record stuff and see if you can get a following that way, right? We didn't have those. We had gatekeepers. Um, but yeah, I think it's always saying yes to stuff. Once you've picked that lane, I do think that the universe sort of bends if you know where you want to go. If you believe in it and you know where you want to go, then people start conspiring to help you.
I have
Uh,
the exact same philosophy in life. It is kind of interesting how when you focus on what you're doing, it does kind of go, okay, this is where you can go and present you opportunities.
yes,
I'm
but
a
I
big
think,
fan of yes.
yeah, yeah, and I think you just have to say yes to things. Sometimes it is something that you don't think is necessarily going to be part of your career path. Like you didn't think that with QVC. Right? But you just never know. And it was like that with that paranormal show. I mean, I just do remember getting those tapes shipped of those first 8 episodes and watching this and thinking, I just can't see myself ever doing this. And I just kind of took one step forward, and then it was a turning point for
Now,
me.
given how your career went, what are the things that you wish you could have been working on that you didn't get to?
I mean, I think that it took me a little bit in the very beginning. If I'm gonna here, I'll go deep and psychoanalyze myself a little bit. But I think that in the very beginning, I was in it a little bit for the wrong reasons. Like a lot of people, I wanted the adoration of strangers, and I wanted to be famous and have people, see me on the streets, all the wrong reasons. So I think that I spent a lot of time really focused on trying to get in front of the camera when that really wasn't ultimately going to be my passion or my direction. So if I had to do it all over again, I would have had that tough conversation with myself earlier and really just stayed in the lane. And I probably would have been able to get to where I was getting to quicker. But no regrets. I
Well,
mean, that was part of the journey.
well, I know I feel the same way. I was an actress and a TV host, and I knew all along that if you split that lane and your hosting agents and your acting agents don't want to talk to each other, that I had an amazing agent who had two clients at the time. He became the CEO of William Morris. He had myself and Ryan Seacrest. We both started. The difference was Ryan was really serious about just doing one thing, and I was kind of I loved and in retrospect I wouldn't change it. I got to host national radio shows, do TV
Yeah,
commercials, act in theater. I had a great life. I didn't necessarily end up being Julia Roberts, but is her life any better than mine? I don't think so.
right. No, and that's why I say no regrets. In the end, it couldn't have been any other way. I did love both tracks. Um, Being on TV and being just okay at it actually helps me coach talent because, I'm sort of like the baseball manager who hit 250. Like at least I understand what they're thinking and what they're going through in certain moments, and I think I'm able to give better direction and to give people better notes. But I'm always amazed when I work with talent. I work with talent that's just so much naturally better. And so it's just being able to sort of harness that because I do think that And Forbes, I would imagine you agree with this. I really do think that the core of it, right? People will forgive a lot. Like some people can be a little bit less articulate than someone else. Some people can like speak too fast or too loud, or maybe it's not the perfect read. But if there's an authenticity and sort of a love of performance that's shining through, I think that people will gravitate towards it.
You said something though that I question. You said you were doing it for the wrong reason. Why is wanting the adoration of other people and the accolades of being on television or a star or whatever that might be wrong?
Because it's something outside yourself, right? It's not the love of the actual work. I mean, you were an actor, so I think that someone who's an amazing actor loves taking a script, loves breaking it down, loves figuring out the background of the character, right? That's a skill set. That's a love of the actual process.
Hmm.
The other one is a love of the end result. It's like people who want to be rich, but they don't want to do anything to get there, right? They dream of the boats and the mansions, but they're not interested in the process, so they end up playing the lottery. I think that the right reason, look, the end result is always fun. It's always great. I'm not saying that it's not fun to, walk the red carpet and go up and collect an award. But if you don't love the process, if that's not the core, then I think it's the wrong reason. Look, I used to tell people who would come in and interview for a producing job on Dead Files or Reasonable Doubt, I said, if it seems fun to you on a Saturday night at 12:30 at night in a three-star hotel in Des Moines, Iowa, to sit and do and break down the shoot for the next day, this is the job for you.
I
If
love it.
not, don't do it because that's what it's about. And
You
that's
know,
the right reasons.
that's kind of why I interview assistants. If you don't want getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning to come to home shopping with me and schlep all this stuff, then you're in the wrong business because that's part of what I had to do. It all looks glamorous at the end, but I will tell you, when you turn the camera around, you see everything. It's not as glamorous as it looks.
Yeah.
Although I do have something, I do have a glamour thing right here. I just got this. I know,
Congratulations.
because I do love to walk the red carpet. And this is Best Author and Coach Influencer, which is probably my heart, an award that I just got in Miami.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. It is nice to be acknowledged for the hard work you do because I now understand the point of what you had to say. And it is true. We do sit up all night long sometimes and work 24-hour days without complaining. That's what you do. I shot a movie in Tucson, Arizona. Couldn't wait to get there, except in Tucson, Arizona at night when we were doing night shoots, it was like below zero. We're freezing. And I'm like, I wanted this so bad. And now I'm like, hey, wishing I were home. But, you do what you got to do.
100%.
That
And
is
you
so
love it.
I love this. I love every aspect of what I got into. I tell people because people are like, do you like acting or hosting? I like when the camera's pointed that way. I really do. That's my favorite days ever. And there's an interesting thing I just did. I'm hosting a new live event, and a couple of the producers showed up, and one of them, two of them had to get on camera, and it was really interesting because when I'll put strangers on camera, they're not very good. And this one woman got up who seemed awfully nervous. As soon as the camera on, she was like magic. There is definitely something about people who can communicate through this lens and
Mhm.
organically, intuitively understand what it is. And it's painful to watch people who are not good at it.
Yes, that's 100% true. And I find that probably the biggest thing that holds people back, because working in unscripted, I'm dealing with a lot of people who aren't professional actors, right? Who, um, were casting people like for Reasonable Doubt. It was a homicide detective and it was an attorney, right? So the biggest thing that I think is a challenge for people who aren't trained actors is it's an exercise. It's like a Zen exercise in letting go, truly being your authentic self and being detached from results. And I think when people try to be too perfect at it and they start getting nervous and they start getting in their own heads, that's where the magic goes away. And right, there's certain people sometimes I watch and I'll take notes down of even just like actors, like just it's in my bucket list that I'm going to do an indie movie. And I see some people who are so open to the screen. It's just like mesmerizing. You can't take your eyes off them, right? Like they're just open. And it's that I don't know if you can teach that, but that's magic right there.
Funny because I've done a couple of lower budget projects lately, and one or two of them they're not that good. And I watch them and I'm like, huh. What is it about certain actors that you watch that makes them just so freaking? I watched Mark Wahlberg the other day. I don't care what he could read the laundry list for all I care. This is just natural. This is like he's just never doing anything but being open. It's like, dude, I don't know if you can teach that stuff. I
Yeah.
think so. Paranormal. What did you learn on the Dead Files? Is it real? Should I be worried? Are ghosts coming back? What's the deal?
All right, so let me turn that around. What I found out, because at first I was like, okay, these people are all crazy. Um, that's what I thought at first. But we went into so many homes of people. And to me, when we were casting this, I would instruct the producers, like, look, I can't cast it based on the paranormal. I'm not a medium or a sensitive. I have no idea what they really have in their house. I want it based on their unwavering belief that this is a problem, right? We were helping people who absolutely believed that the paranormal was making their lives unlivable, whether it was a business or a home. And I remember in the beginning going into these homes and I was like, kind of looking, it's almost like infomercials. I was kind of looking for the wink and the nod, like, okay, they're putting us on, they're getting one of, no, this was 100% certainty. Um, am I 100% convinced that there really was a haunting in the way that they thought? I don't know. I'm a pretty good rationalist, so I have my doubts. But I will say that our medium, who took a lot of pains to not know where she was going, even what city we were going into, like there were a lot of things there to make sure that it was on the up and up. And a lot of times by the end, after she did her walk, she would be talking to the clients, the people who own the house, and it's like they were speaking their own language in another way. They were so on the same wavelength, and it was like, okay, so this probably happens at 3 in the morning. Yes, how did you know? And this happens. It was pretty wild. So is there something, look, I'm humble. There's so much about this world we don't understand. There's so much that we know so much less than we do know. I don't know what these drones are in New Jersey. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff going on. Um, but for me, as the showrunner and for the staff and for telling a story, I was like, it's not for us to judge it, and it's not for us to get caught up in, is it true? Is it not true? It's a story of an investigation. We had someone, a retired NYPD homicide detective, who would get witness statements as if they had just been mugged in the streets. Same kind of method. He would go do research on the history of the house and the history of the neighborhood, and then we'd match it all together and see if it worked. It did a lot. So it was really just telling great stories about these investigations, but ultimately, what I really was proud of was, and I was able to kind of make this change in the show, it became about the people more than the haunting. Something in their lives was missing. And by the end of the show, I felt that in almost every episode there was an arc and they changed. And let me give you an example of that. I remember that we were in a house, I think it was Jersey, actually, and it was uh, a woman who called us in. She was married to a cop, and her son had just moved back into the home. And she said that she had poltergeist activity. Things were flying around on their own, right? So, anyway, our medium does the walk. She knows nothing about any of this. And she starts picking up that there is poltergeist activity, but it's coming because the mom is angry at the son. And so we're doing the interview with the cop. She's not there for that part of it. So we're doing the interview with the cop and the woman, and she's talking about all the experiences. And I'm like, let's be a little bit nosy. Let's push a little bit. What's the relationship like with your son? What's going on? Well, he did come back and he's engaged to a man, and that man is living here. And how do you feel about that? I don't like it. I don't like it at all. So what it ended up turning out being was that at the end, and you can see this as an allegory or you can take it literally. That's the choice of the viewer. She was haunting herself because she couldn't accept her son for he was. And by finally accepting who he was, that is the only way that the activity would stop. So look, you can take that on many different levels, but I loved that episode. I thought that's a different way of going into the paranormal. It's not just about jump scares.
I got massive chills when you told that story. Wow. Ooh. Hmm. That's wonderful. You have definitely some innate talent on producing. So you're working on a book. That's a departure. What are you doing?
So yeah, this is definitely a departure, and it kind of ties into what I was doing with Reasonable Doubt. So controversial premise, but I believe it, and I think I can back this up. It's called Crimes of Omission, and the premise of the book, which is sold, is that from 2012 to 2020, starting with Trayvon Martin, culminating with the riots after the murder of George Floyd, the media created the conditions for that rioting, not through what they reported. What they reported was factually correct. It
Right.
was by what they left out. And by not telling the whole story, by not contextualizing it, by not also running all the stories of the vast majority of the unarmed people who were shot who were not Black, they left people with the indelible impression, which the public had no other reason but to trust the media, that there was a real crisis of systemic racism within American police departments. So I'm telling the whole story, and I'm not saying that there wasn't a problem, but I'm saying that I think it was so much more nuanced, and you wouldn't have seen the rage and the violence and the country being torn in two had it been reported in the way that old school journalistic standards would have reported this story.
So why do this as a book versus a video medium?
I think this is a bucket list, like I was saying about the indie movie. I've always wanted to write a book. I think ultimately I would like to turn it into a documentary afterwards. But it's been a good exercise for me and different, and it's really stretching another muscle. And it's just something I've always wanted to do, and the opportunity came, and I decided to go
Yeah.
for it. And it's a little bit, I don't know if you feel this way, Forbes, but it's like there's certain things where I know the process. So if I'm doing a show, if I'm doing a documentary, there's not a lot of fear at this point or nerves because I know exactly what the steps are and where, where the trouble's going to be. And this has been a different, this is a little nerve-wracking and it's a little bit of a stretch, and that kind of makes it exciting.
Well, I'm
I
in
think.
this similar situation as I've got pitch secrets coming out, and I always say to people because we're going to self-publish this, even though we've had interest. There's a different reason for this book, and we're pretty clear on that. But I said if you want to do an infomercial, come talk to me. I know how to structure that. I know exactly what to do. Book things a little different. Going out on a tour of the book's a little different. How did you? But you sold it before because this is one of the things that you're good at, isn't it? You sold the book to a publisher, or how did that
I
work?
did. Yeah, I put together a book proposal. Literally didn't know how to do one. I went online and read a couple articles on how to put together a book proposal. It's actually a lot of work. You have to write a couple chapters and outline the chapters and your marketing plan and all of that. And it took about a year to sell it. Spoke to different publishers and different agents, and it's a whole different world. It's in broadcast, you basically put together a pitch deck, you put together a sizzle reel, so there's a little bit of outlay of time and cash, right? So for infomercials, I had interviewed Tony Little and Tommy Woo. Those were my two. Oh, and Suzanne Summers.
Yeah.
She did one of her last interviews before she died with me, and put together a sizzle reel and was able to sell it through that with a pitch deck. So you're you're taking a chance because maybe you'll do five of them, and if you're lucky, one will sell. Um, with the book, it was really about time, right? It was 50 pages of writing, and it was doing the research and all that, and it was a huge leap of faith. What I've realized with books, unless you're a huge name, um, you don't make any money unless the book sells. So that's fine. I'm fine with that kind of an arrangement. Usually with television, you negotiate and the network agrees to a certain budget, and you're whether it does well or not, you're sort of, as the producer or director, you're getting paid either way. So this is a little more entrepreneurial.
Definitely entrepreneurial. So if you could wave a magic wand, what would you love to be doing? Let's say the book is a success, does very well. But that book aside, what else is out there that you're like, I haven't on your bucket list besides indie film?
Yes, I 100% want to do it. I've written a lot of scripts. I'll know when it's the right one, right? It's sort of like that self-reflection with the being on air. I've written some that I like, but not enough that I'm willing to say, okay, this is the hill I'm going to die on. So I still have a couple ideas for scripts, but 100% at some point I will direct a script that I wrote and send it through the festival and self-finance it and send it through the festival circuit. And I want to have done that. So, but I want to wait for the time when I know that it's something that I 100% believe in, that I can't. I don't know if this is the same with you, but like I get a million ideas, and on my phone, I have a little app, and I'm always writing them down.
What app do you
90%.
use? Out of curiosity.
Which one?
Yeah.
I
I,
just, you know what? It's nothing fancy. It is the reminders app that comes on the iPhone, and I just have one with I have one that says nonfiction ideas, and I have one that says fiction ideas.
I love that.
And things hit me, and I write them down. And every so often, I'll go in and pare them down. And 75% of them I haven't thought about again. They're not interesting, but they're just some that stick with you. And I feel like it's the ones that stick with you because when you do one of these projects, if you do a documentary, if you do a book, like you're going to live with it for 1 or 2 years.
Yes, you are.
You better really love the topic. It better not just be a fleeting thought. So for me, when there's an idea that just won't let go, then I know that that's what I got to do.
What does Rob do when he's not working?
When I'm not working, all right. I played this past week. Okay, this is super nerdy. This past weekend, I'm a pretty serious backgammon player, and I was
I
at the
love that. All right, next time we're in the same room and we're out on Marina Del Rey, we're doing that.
okay. So I played in the LA Open in the advanced division.
Okay, that's nerdy. That's adorable.
It was I got to the semifinals. It wasn't the pro. The pros are the top. This was the division right below it, but it was quite an experience. There were a lot of people there who look like they don't get a ton of sunlight. They could use a little Forbes Riley workout. Um, and what else do I do? I love tennis and hiking and traveling and my Peloton. I'll bore anyone and talk about my Peloton workouts.
Really? Why?
Why do I love it?
Yeah, yeah.
I think that I think that I really like metrics and I like really having a breakdown broken down with all the data points. And so it gives me something to like, I see how I'm improving. I see the incremental improvement.
So something that you don't know about me, I haven't talked to you in a little while. Josh and I and the kids we're in Iceland, which is have you been to Iceland yet?
No.
Definitely on your bucket list. The same price as New York City. It's a phenomenal environment to be in. We were snowmobiling on a glacier, came back on this van that somehow slipped on a patch of ice, took flight, and crashed down on my side of the van. And that might have been the end of my story because my face went through the glass onto the street.
Oh my God.
I know it was pretty damn
And
traumatic.
you're still recommending Iceland.
Oh my God. We drove the next day and saw the volcano exploding. Let me tell you, it is a phenomenal place. I'll give you the entire tour because you literally get off your plane into a giant lagoon. People are lovely, and yes, yes, yes. And then what happened out of that accident, I tore my shoulder a couple of places. We all walked away, some of us limping, but we all walked away. And a couple of days later, Joshua made mention, he's a bodybuilder, that there was a competition in our hometown of St. Pete. We've never competed, he never competed locally. It's always you have to travel. And he said, there's a category for women over 60. And I'm like, that's nice. I did my weight this last January 2024. I was the heaviest I'd ever been, 33% body fat. And I was pretty damn comfortable. I'm writing books and doing projects. Who cares, right? And then I took a photo of me kind of in a bra and panties and thought, who is that old lady with the what's going on there? And something hit me, let's call it paranormal, shall we? That said, do it. I'm like, do what? Kind of like, if you build it, they will come. Like I kept like, what am I supposed to do? You want me to put on a bikini and high heels and parade my ass on a stage? Okay. And I literally said, okay, as though the massive PTSD thought you should do this. In fact, I wrote a book about it called Flipping the Switch. I literally like, okay. I went on to all my students. I have 40,000 students. And I said, guys, in 99 days, I'm going to be in my first fitness competition. And I don't even own a bikini or high heels anymore. And wish me luck. And then I went on this journey of every single day, 2 hours a day working out, of which I had. In fact, when I asked Joshua if he thought I could do it, his response was, yeah, yeah. I'm like, the heck is that? What do you mean? Yeah.
But 99 days, that's all you had.
That's it. At literally 99 days.
Wow.
And I did it. I went all carnivore, did his fitness program 2 hours a day, every day. And I will share with you I should find the before and after, although my audience here won't be able to see it because we're on radio. But I think maybe your reaction will help describe what you see because you are a guy who can,
Yes,
pretty
let's.
much descriptively say what you're seeing. I hadn't really planned on doing that. Give me a second to find it. It's pretty damn dramatic, if you ask me. Here, okay. So my radio producer's like, "What is she doing?" Here it is. Well, here's the before and after. So this,
Wow. Okay.
yeah,
That's and that's in 99 days.
that's 99 days only.
Okay, that's unbelievable.
Well, describe to somebody who can't see what are you looking at here?
Okay, so I would tell you that on the picture on the left, and look, you don't look like an old lady, and you don't look, but it's someone who's like, you know, reasonably,
Right.
um, a little bit out of shape,
Look at this.
but not terribly so for your age range. On the second one, you look
It
like
got better.
your whole body is completely leaned out. You look like 12 years younger, 15 years younger. Um, no body fat, muscle, definition. It's amazing. That's a complete transformation that seriously you would expect that it would have taken like a year or two.
99 days, I will tell you. And then there is a photo that I will share with you about getting literally on the stage in a bikini, and I got a medal for my effort.
So wait, so what is if you can do it that quickly, if you had to narrow it down to like two habit changes that you made that really, really were the core difference, what was it?
Well, here's the big one. Stop doing cardio and put muscle on your body. I followed my husband's created a program, a way of lifting weights, which I didn't really. I was in the gym. I would go on the phone in my sauna and Instagram. I wasn't lifting weights. I never wanted to do that. All women have all kind of preconceptions. I did my Pilates. I did my cardio. I did none of that. I just did his program. I did your abs and your arms and your shoulder and your back and your tries and your buys and your trap. And I learned every muscle. And that's what I got from his program, where your chest muscle attaches, and built muscle and then fed those muscles a lot of protein. No carbs, no sugar. And I just did that cold turkey for that.
Would you eat uh, complex carbs? I mean, would you have broccoli?
Very little. I ate a little bit of broccoli because you know why? Here's what happened. Remember, I'm also suffering from massive PTSD. I did not have the patience to be cooking and creating things. And so even steaming broccoli was annoying, or cauliflower. Or I do remember I did only keto for about the first couple of weeks. Like we're talking chicken, fish, steak, eggs, and yogurt, and maybe some cottage cheese. And I put literally cottage cheese with a little bit of cinnamon and artificial sweetener was my dessert, and lots of water. But I said, you know what? I had two or three coaches want to coach me. And like, they were like, you could win this thing. And I'm like, you need to back off. Not winning anything. I just need to get through this and stay sane and keep focused. And I don't need to think about anything but what I'm doing. And I'll tell you what, the way that I ate, and here's what's interesting. Just like you said, I didn't do any carbs. As little as possible, because it's about throwing your body into massive fat burning ketosive mode, going to the infrared sauna, getting the massage, really focusing. I hadn't focused on my body, I think, in a decade like that. And I'm going to share with you, most people don't put on muscle. You think, yeah, and they don't even know how. Joshua has like these right exercises. The next thing you know, my shoulders were looking good. Everything started to like, I'd been thin, but I'd never been fit. Very interesting journey.
Wow. Now, when you say you didn't do cardio, did you do walking? Did you do certain things to just try to get motion?
Very little. When you're doing 2 hours of weightlifting and you're that intense, Joshua, he's an award-winning bodybuilder. Guys, go look up joshuaself.esi on Instagram. That boy, he does a little bit of riding his bicycle once in a while. Nah, he's not treadmilling. He's not doing any cardio. The goal is if you continually lift and you get your heart rate elevated. Now, should people do this? It's hard to tell. I have a bum knee, so wanting to be on a treadmill or being on a bike is only so interesting to me. And I was only doing so much of it. So all I know is you saw the transformation.
Yeah,
That's what I did
unbelievable.
to get there. Now, to stay healthy, you want to work out your heart, obviously your Peloton. But I'm going to share with you, when you start to understand the body and depleting it of certain things, when you work out cardio-wise, is not as powerful as building muscle. And I watched a TED Talk, and she talked about the fact that obesity is not as much a fat problem as a lack of muscle problem.
Hmm.
Who knew?
Now, were you working out 2 hours a day?
Yep.
7 days a week? Were there off days? Like,
You know, I was obsessed. Here's the other thing that happens. When you have a goal, and maybe you can relate to this part, I had 99 days and I knew that. June 29th, and I started March. So that's all I kept thinking about. And I counted every day. Like every single day I did a post. And I would talk to Joshua about it. I was like, I'm on day 32. He's like, I'm on day 4,082. I'm like, this is my journey. And then we only have a couple more minutes, but I'll tell you something else that happened. And this is fascinating to me about why we stopped doing things. On day 67, I'm in the gym and I had a vision and I'm all upset and I'm shaking and I'm sweating and the gym owner wanted to kick me out. I could start seeing a bridge coming at my face. Well, apparently losing the fat on my back, which I'd always yo-yoed down to and then put it back, had to do with being molested at 15. And I'd forgotten a piece of it. There was a piece of this happened. We were flying back on a little private plane. And when the guy had reached over to touch me again, we almost crashed into this bridge. I never told that story to anybody. In fact, when we landed, because my dad was a private pilot and wanted me to go out with this guy, and we went to a beach and my dad had no idea what happened. He said to me, how was your afternoon? I said, fine. I go home. My mom says, how was your afternoon? I said, fine. Went upstairs, closed the door, hid that memory for 49 years. It all came flooding back in this journey.
that's powerful.
Like, dear God, thank you so much for all that you put me through to get here because I feel better, lighter emotionally than I've ever in my, and a lot of the weight that fell off was an emotional thing.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so there you go. All right.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's inspiring.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you, how did your parents view your success?
I mean, I think they were very resistant to this kind of career. I mean, it's, immigrant dream, Jewish. You want to be you want a lawyer or a doctor?
I get it. I'm feeling it. They want to
So,
be a lawyer, right?
I mean, I think once I hit a certain level, then they were very proud, but I think they were very resistant. I mean, it used to be a running joke. My mom, I would call her at 40 and, and I'm working on this show and I'm running this show. And she'd be like, do you remember your friend from down the street? He just decided to go back to law school. So it took a long time, but yeah, I think that they were proud. But I mean, for me, I think again, we talk about the wrong reasons and the right reasons, and I think it's making yourself proud, right? Ultimately, that's trying to do it for others' approval is never going to be a winning game.
We have 1 minute left of this live interview. Give me a thought for the world.
A thought for the world. I would just really say that I've become a really big believer that you create your own reality. You have to really dig deep and find the thing that you're the most passionate about, that you love doing it, and do it for yourself and give yourself the approval and give yourself the encouragement. Don't wait for someone else to say, okay.
I got it. Time is up. This was an amazing Forbes Factor, Rob. I have loved spending time with you guys. Make sure you join us every week, whether it's here, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, or anywhere that a podcast plays. We're all over. This was an amazing interview. When you listen to it, share it with your friends. Till next time.
Thanks, Forbes.